Welcome Libra to your in-depth monthly horoscope for December 2023 for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some standout details to look out for. First up, Venus, your ruler, makes the transition from your sign into Scorpio on the 4th. Venus in Scorpio is detrimented in a technical sense, but for you, this could provide some kind of uplift to your financial circumstances, but also give you an added appreciation of all the calorific goodies through the festivities. It is going to be relocating again on the 29th into the sociable sign of Sagittarius, just in the nick of time for the New Year's celebrations. But I need to show you about Mercury moving on the first day, going into retrograde on the 13th, returning back into the sign of Sagittarius on the 23rd. So it's an action-packed month. Please stay with me for more. Now, if you've yet to order your personal horoscope for year 2024, if you do so now, you can still get the rest of this year free. But also my special package, you'll get your character analysis report, your life roadmap, and 30% off, but also your year 2024 zodiac forecast for each of the 12 signs, but also Indian forecast for each of the 12 signs, and Chinese forecast for each of the 12 animal signs, totally free of charge, those booklets. Please see the link below for more. So Libra, as you make your way into December, there's a sense of excitement, I feel. The Sun and Mars in the third house can make you a little bit restless, but you can turn that restlessness and that energy into engaging with others. It's just that Mercury moves on the first day into the sign of Capricorn, which is house 4. A bit more protected and private. Mercury also went into its pre-retrograde shadow on the 25th of November. So if you have been having some discussions with siblings or neighbours about the arrangements for Christmas, I think they will be firmed up just as you come into the new month. But your desire to mix and mingle is definitely emphasised by the Sun and Mars. And on the 4th, as Venus makes its way out of your sign into Scorpio, that's also going to amp up your appreciation of the more Tauran side of Venus, the more sensual side. So if there is somebody important to you, you may want to get up close and personal, or you may be wanting to spoil them rotten in terms of Christmas gifts. The 6th, however, sees Neptune end a long retrograde, which began at the end of June. If your physical vitality has felt quite low, particularly in this last year, but especially from the 7th of March, it wouldn't be an entire surprise, because this 22.5-week retrograde is also, or has also been working alongside the energy of Saturn in the sign of Pisces. I think since 2012, that giving part of your nature has been very much to the fore, even self-sacrificing part of your nature with Neptune in Pisces. Having Saturn there now is making you more mindful of setting boundaries, but also the impact that that give is having on you if you're not getting anything back. So I feel Neptune coming out of the retrograde is a good thing, but it is going to be very powerful in 3 phases throughout the rest of this month. The first off is as we have the new moon. The new moon in Sagittarius links brilliantly with the North Node in your 7th house of relating. If there is somebody you're drawn to, this is really encouraging you to go for it, particularly with Mars in the mix, because Mars is going to give you a greater urgency. But in the sign of Sagittarius, it's much more in the moment. It's a mutable sign. And I feel that this new moon could be quite lucky for you in terms of connections generally. But it's also important that you're not trying to do too much for others. And that's where Neptune comes in, because from the 12th through to the 19th, it's in a broad square with Neptune. So your words need to be carefully measured, the 3rd house, everyday conversation, with what the outcome of any promises that you make, because we all only have a certain amount of energy, and of course this time of year can be quite demanding, and we need to keep our stamina intact. So focus on what you need to do for yourself, I feel, is the advice. The 13th sees Mercury go into a retrograde in Capricorn. Is there something around a family situation that is going to require some rethinking? Maybe it is about who's going to attend the celebrations, who's going to go where and who with. There could be some crosswires. We know Mercury retrograde can be an issue, but equally Mercury in the sign of Capricorn can be very businesslike. So if you're someone who wants to work from home, you could find yourself thinking very carefully about that. The interesting thing about this retrograde, of course, is that Mercury inverts back into Sagittarius on the 23rd, but certainly over the following 10 days, if there are ways in which you could perhaps work from home a little bit more, or use the extra flexibility that would have to work around your family demands and needs, that could be very attractive to you. But from the 18th to the 23rd is also potentially very fascinating as far as your love life is concerned. If you are single, Libra, the fact that Venus goes face to face with Uranus in quite a lusty way, because Uranus is in house 8, which is about full-on intimacy, but of course Uranus can resist connections because it likes independence, but also Uranus is about truth, and it also is being a bit more shockingly daring. So Venus in your second house is also about desire, but in a slightly different way, but in the intense sign of Scorpio. So I feel that relationships generally can be much more amped up. So you can feel a greater sense of attraction, or if there's someone you're not getting on with, there could be a desire to separate. And the issue may not just be about sex. It could be about money. It could be about different attitudes and values, which is what the second house is represented by. But equally, because you can be very generous and you do like a little bit of lux, you could splash out, even though you've been practicing saying to yourself, I'm going to keep to this budget this year, I'm not going to budge from it. You could find yourself going for it a little bit more, and being a bit more impulsive if there is someone you seriously want to impress. The 22nd winter solstice ushers in cardinal quadrant 4, the last of 4 of the year. So Western tropical astrology is based on 4 lots of 13 weeks. It doesn't merge with the Georgian, the Gregorian, or the Julian calendars. What it applies to is the season, so starts with the spring equinox. So this last quarter for you is going to see you thinking a lot about where you live and about family and emotional issues. And that's obviously revved up by the fact that Pluto's here, and for one day initially, until the 23rd, Mercury's in its retrograde in Capricorn, but then that inverses back into Sagittarius. Now the third house can be about siblings, it can also be about neighbours. You may find a greater connection. Mercury retrograde's controversial. A lot of people will write and say that Mercury retrograde can only bring mishaps. What I would say is, because Mercury is in Sagittarius, Sagittarius does influence long distance travel. So flights could be affected. I think that's entirely possible. Just to say, for example, when Mars went opposite Uranus, we had those big fissures in Iceland where the Earth was actually cracking apart. It just shows the power of astrology that does align with geological events. So we can't dismiss the fact that Mercury retrograde could potentially have quite a big impact, not just in the last 10 days of this year, but I think also throughout 2024. And the reason for that is that as the year comes to a close, Mercury is in retrograde, but very close to Mars, also in Sagittarius. So anything to do with industrial disputes where people don't feel that there's fairness, because Sagittarius can be to do with a higher justice, could bring out some incendiary things throughout 24, because we've got that 4 lots of fire Mercury retrograde and just 10 days of a Virgo retrograde in August, so the Earth. So a lot of fire around Mercury in 24, and you get that at the end of this month. But also, of course, what it can do in the 3rd house is see you've been quite outspoken, and with Mars in the mix, perhaps if there's something you want to share or say to people that you feel really passionate about, you could surprise yourself by how passionately you do share your point of view. But on Christmas Day itself, the moon is in Gemini, which is great for you. The 9th house could see you wanting to go somewhere else. If you are spending the Christmas day in a different location, you'll probably really love it. It is going to square up to Neptune though. So if you are at home and it falls to you to do the lion's share of the arranging and contributing to make it a success for everyone else, could leave you feeling a bit weary. Also, Neptune supplying in a square to Mercury and Mars as this year comes to a close. So you could find yourself, I feel, particularly on the back of the full moon, feeling a little bit weary, maybe just balancing some work and professional affairs with what you want and need for yourself as an individual could be a bit tricky. But Jupiter and Saturn link into that full moon of the 27th in a really good way. And I'm going to explain this because Jupiter for you is in house 8, and right through to the 23rd of May, it can bring you rewards. Now on the 21st of April 2024, Jupiter and Uranus are going to forge a conjunction. Now that's a really exciting event that hasn't happened for a very long time. So I want you to know that Jupiter can still bring you rewards until it moves into your sister air sign of Gemini on the 23rd of May. But as we come into the end of this year, it's linking very pragmatically with Saturn. Now, Jupiter being about growth and Saturn being about restraint, they balance each other out. Jupiter can sometimes promise more than it can deliver. Saturn can be a misery guts. Jupiter can help to liven Saturn up. So a good balance between attention to detail, Saturn in the 6th, responsibilities, obligation and work, but also being open to growing things from a more speculative viewpoint. Jupiter can be about trade. It looks good for not just the end of this year, but also into the first weeks of 24 for you. But then Venus moves into Sagittarius on the 29th, and that's a really sparkly influence, joining up with Mercury and Mars, but Mercury in that retrograde. Another way Mercury in retrograde in the 3rd house with Mars could play out is that if you do get a new device over the festive holidays or nab one in the sales, you could be reading the instructions, but the urgency, well, let's put it bluntly, the impatience of Mars could see you go, throw it over your shoulder and think, I'm off to the pub. So if you need to grapple with anything to do with details, expect to be a bit more impatient at the end of the month. But also, I just feel that you are going to really be enlivened by Venus to join up with Mercury and Mars. And even if there's that part of you that would perhaps be a little bit more homey at this time of year, totally understandable, you might be up for having a bit more of an interaction to bring the curtain down on the year. And also the Sun's forging a sensational link with Jupiter. As we come to the end of 2023, Jupiter goes direct on the 31st. I think that's something we're all going to appreciate after what has been quite a brutal year in lots of different ways. And so I feel that this is a month that is certainly going to have some excitement to it and some interesting dimensions for you, but it's important to try to grapple with that rather draining influence of Neptune, which can come in at times, cause some worrisome energy, some psychological anxieties, especially if you feel you're not quite doing enough for others. I feel with Saturn's help you need to be reinforcing your boundaries, and that link with Saturn and Jupiter at the end of this year can certainly help you to do that, particularly as it's threaded through that full moon. If you are set to spend Christmas Day on your own, please know you will be especially in my thoughts. But whatever your circumstances, I'm wishing you a very happy Christmas and all the best for year 2024. If you'd be so kind to like, comment, share or subscribe, I'd be much obliged.